Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to explore the reference angles and coterminal angles. Alright, so first we're going to talk about the standard position. An angle is in standard position if its vertex is located at the origin and one ray is on the positive x-axis. Alright, so this is x-axis. Now on the right of x-axis, this is positive, right? So positive infinity. This is the y-axis and positive infinitive. This is negative infinitive and this is negative infinitive. Alright, so keep in mind the initial rate always on the positive x-axis, right? So this is called initial rate. Now we're gonna sketch a terminal rate. So a terminal rate could be on the first quadrant, or on the second quadrant, or on the third quadrant, or on the fourth quadrant right here, right? Now if the coterminal rate on the first quadrant, the angle is right here, right? If the coterminal rate on the second quadrant, this is the angle. If the coterminal rate on the third quadrant, the angle should be this guy. And if the coterminal rate on the fourth quadrant, the angle must be this. Now, we're going to talk about the positive angles in the counterclockwise direction. Alright, so counterclockwise should be this direction. Alright, so we have initial rate is going to be right here. And then the terminal rate is could be this guy. Right? So this angle is positive. I call this theta is greater than 0. Right? Now, we're going to talk about the negative angles. Negative angles are in the clockwise direction. Alright, so if the angle going this way, so I have initial rate is going to be right here. Now terminal rate is going to be like this, right? And the angle right here is going to be theta right here. This guy is less than 0, right? Now next one, we know that if the terminal rate and the initial rate overlapping, the angle is 0, right? If the terminal rate and the positive y-axis overlapping, right? So for example, the terminal rate is right here, right? And then the angle theta is equals 90 degrees, right? So 90 degrees is going to be the same thing as pi over 2. Alright, keep in mind pi in radian is the same thing as 180 degrees. Alright, we're gonna learn about this one in the next video. Alright. Now, if the terminal rate and the negative x-axis overlapping, and then the angle is going to be 180 degrees or pi, right? If the terminal rate and the negative y-axis overlapping, and then the angles equals 270 degrees or 3 pi over 2. If the terminal rate and the positive x-axis overlapping after one cycle, alright, and then the angle is 2 pi or 360 degrees. Now, next one, we're going to talk about the reference angle. A reference angle is the smallest acute angle that the terminal ray of the angle makes with the x-axis when drawn on the coordinate plane. Regardless of the location of the terminal side, the reference angle measures the closest distance of that side from the x-axis. Alright, so let's take a look at the diagram on the right hand side. Alright, if the terminal rate on the first quadrant, right, and then the reference angles and the angle is gonna be the same thing, right? So this angle right here. Now, if the terminal rate on the second quadrant, and then this is the angle. Now, the reference angle is this guy right here. Right? It say the smallest acute angle that the terminal rate of the angle makes with the x-axis, right? So it's gonna be right here, the x-axis right here. Now, if the terminal rate on the third quadrant, right? So we have the angle, which means the blue one, and then the reference angle should be this guy right here. Remember, the terminal rate makes with the x-axis only, okay? Now, some students make mistake. They say this is the reference angles, but not the case, okay? So keep that in mind. Now, if the terminal rate on the fourth quadrant, and then we see that the blue one is the angle, and then the reference angle must be this one, all right? Now, why we learn this one is going to be extremely helpful when you learn the next topic, all right? So, for example, the first case right here, if the angle is 40 degree, right? And then the reference angle must be 40 degree, right? Because they're both the same. Now, the second one, if the angle is 120 degree, right? And then in order to find the reference angles right here, you're gonna take 180, right? Subtract 120, right? It's gonna be 60 degree, right? In AP Precalculus, we're gonna use radian. We're not gonna use degree, right? So keep that in mind. On the AP exam, you need to switch your calculator to the radian. What if I need to calculate this one in radian, right? I know that 180, which means pi, right? Minus 120, which means 2 pi over 3, right? So pi subtract 2 pi over 3, which means pi over 3, right? Now pi, which means 180. 180 divided by 3, which means 60 degree, right? Alright, now if the reference angle is right here, and suppose the angle is 225 degree, right? And then we need to find the measure of the reference angle right here, right? So we know that this angle 225 right here equals the reference angles right here plus 180 right here, right? Alright, so the reference angles is, I call this S, so S equals 225 subtract 180, right? So it's gonna be 45 degrees or pi over 4, right? Because pi equals 180, right? 180 divided by 4 is gonna be 45 degrees, right? Now let's move on to the last one. Suppose the angle is 300 degree, right? Now we need to find the measure of the reference angle, right? So in order to do that, we know that this guy right here, the blue one plus the red one equals 360 degrees, right? So the measure of the reference angle is S. It's gonna be 360 degree subtract 300 degree, right? So it could be 60 degree. And 60 degrees is the same thing as pi over 3, right? Now, to summarize, here's the formula to calculate the measure of the reference angle, right? If the reference angle in the first quadrant is going to be equal to the given angle, right? If the reference angle on the second quadrant is going to be 180 subtract the given angle, right? If the reference angle on the third quadrant is going to be the given angle subtract 180 degree. And last one, if the reference angle on the fourth quadrant is going to be 360 subtract given angle. So keep that in mind. Now let's move on to the last one. Coterminal angles are angles in standard position. Alright, standard position, which means the initial rate on the positive x-axis, right? So it's gonna be right here. Now they share the same terminal side but have different measures, right? So this one is given angle, right? It's gonna be 45 degrees, right? The blue one is the coterminal angles with the 45 degree right here, and the orange one is also the coterminal angle with the 45 degrees right here. Now how do we find it? In order to find the measure of the coterminal angles, we literally add or subtract multiples of 360 if you need to calculate that angles in degrees, or 2 pi if you need to calculate that angle in radians, right? And then in AP Precalculus, we're going to talk about the radians only, so keep that in mind. On the AP exam, please put your answer in the radians, not degree. Alright, so now go back over here. In order to calculate the blue one, right, I need to take 45 degree. I subtract 360, right? Because it say add or subtract, right? So it's going to be negative 315, right? Or I can add 45 degree to 360 degree. And then I'm going to have 405 degree, which is the orange one right here. And you see that the coterminal angles and the given angle, they both have the same terminal side and initial side, right? But they could be the same direction or opposite direction, right? Look at the 45 and 405 degrees right here. They have the same direction, which means counterclockwise, right? So they're positive. Now look at the given one is the 45 degree, and the coterminal angles right here, negative 315 degrees right here. They have opposite direction, which is clockwise right here, right? Alright, so keep that in mind. Now, we have infinitely many coterminal angles, right? Now, if you need to find other coterminal angles, you just take 45 right here, right? You subtract 2 times 360 and you get the answer, right? This is the coterminal angles. Or you can take 45, you subtract 100 times 360, right? And then you get a new coterminal angles right here, right? Because it say add or subtract multiples of 360, right? So multiple, which means the number right here, right? It should be integer, right? Or you could add 2 times 360, or you could add 100 times 360 degree, right? Now in AP Precalculus exam, we're not going to talk about the degree. We only talk about the radians, right? So we need to convert every single degree right here into radian, right? So how do we do it? Now look at this one, 45. So 45, which means pi over 4, right? Now I need to find the coterminal angles of pi over 4, right? So I need to add 2 pi, right? So it's going to be 9 pi over 4, right? This guy is the same thing as 405 degree. Now, I can subtract 2 pi from pi over 4, right? So it's going to be negative 7 pi over 4, right? And this guy is the same thing as negative 315 degree. And it's good time to stop. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember that if you failing to prepare, you're preparing to fail.
We rise like tall buildings as the chemicals they take us higher. The night's young and it's just begun as she puts her hand in mine.